Hi guys, today I'm going to talk a little bit about experimental design, and in the follow-up video for this I'll talk about the data collection following. So I'm going to split this up into two parts. First, experimental design, how researchers design an experiment, followed by how they analyze the data that they collect from that experiment. Let's jump in. So over here you can see a little worksheet I created for you about experimental design. So when researchers make an observation, they have to create an experiment to test what's causing it. So for example, let's say a researcher is seeing that they're seeing fewer eastern lowland gorillas in the Republic of Congo. In the Republic of Congo, they're doing a lot of mining right now for this mineral called coltan, which is used for cell phone production. So lots of cell phones being made, lots of coltan being mined, a lot of destruction of the lowland gorilla habitat. So the researchers want to see what exactly the impact is. They think that there's a negative impact, but they want to be able to collect data so that they can say for certain that this is what it is. So the first thing that they have to do in order to collect data is to set up a testable hypothesis. And the word testable is really important. The word testable means that they can test it, that it can be used in experiment, that they have to be able to do it like within the constraints of, real life. So they have to be able to set it up and they have to be able to collect data from it. And that data, they have to be able to test it using statistical analyses. So when we talk about statistical analyses, there's two different types of hypotheses. When you were taught the first time, it was probably like, increase light. My hypothesis is that when you increase light, a plant will grow. Well, that's great, but in statistics, there are two different types of hypotheses that we need. What I just said is in scientific lingo called the alternate hypothesis. It's the hypothesis that we're trying to prove. But when we run statistics, we can't use our alternate hypothesis. We have to use what's called a null hypothesis. And that's basically what we're trying to prove wrong. So for the light and plant example, you would say light has no impact on plant growth. That's what you're trying to work against. So here for our mining and gorilla population, the null hypothesis could be that mining has no impact on gorilla population. And our alternate hypothesis would be mining has a negative impact on gorilla population. And so we could use those two hypotheses when we set up our statistical tests. And if you're taking statistics now or you're going to take statistics later, you'll get to see how that all works out. So now we've got our hypotheses. Let's set up some treatments. A treatment is a combination of dependent and your independent variable. And when we set up our treatments, we want to keep our question in mind. So what is the impact of mining on the eastern lowland gorilla? And so I like to think about it, what is the impact of X on Y? What is the impact of mining on the eastern gorilla population? So if we look at this, the impact of mining, so mining amount is going to be our X axis on a graph when eventually we do have data to collect. And this is going to be our independent variable. And so when you can think about it that way, it always kind of falls together. The impact of X on Y, the impact of mining, which is your X, your independent variable, on Y, your eastern lowland gorilla population, which was going to be your Y axis when we eventually graph it, and our dependent variable. Teddy's having a tough time outside, so apologize. Teddy. Okay, so now we have to set them up. We can't just, when we set up our treatments, we're not just going to set up one treatment and be like, that's it. We have to have a basis of comparison. So we have to have multiple different independent variables. It's better for statistics if those independent variables are evenly spaced. So if we're looking at maybe the impact of light, we're changing the wavelengths incrementally the same amount. Or if we're looking at the impact of mining areas, we're changing the mining areas the same amount. The other thing that we want to keep in mind when we set up our treatments is that we want to have not only multiple different independent variables of different amounts, but we want to have replicates of those. So we don't want just one plant growing at a certain wavelength. We want multiple plants. So we want multiple areas that are mined at the same extent. So if you look here, maybe we have 50 acres out of 10,000 or 100 out of 10,000, and we have maybe like 5 to 10 of those areas that we're collecting data from for each. That's called a replicate, and we want multiples of those. And what that does is it captures some of the natural variation that we see. And then we can get an average, and the average is what we're going to end up graphing. And I'll talk to you more about that when we do data collection and analysis in the next video. So we have our treatment set up. We have different independent variables and multiple replicates within each of those treatments. And then the last thing we want to do is have a control treatment. And what a control treatment is it's a basis of comparison. It's something that isn't given the actual treatment, and we just see what the natural population would do. So maybe we have an area that is not mined at all. And then we can compare what the natural population is without mining to the other treatments. So it's a basis of comparison to see what the impact of the treatment is. So you have one group that doesn't receive any treatment at all. And then the next thing we do is collect data, and I will talk about data collection and data analysis in the next video.